Hey everybody, Phil Sma here with another interview with a Quantic EMBA cohort member, and this time it's with Shalyn Oswald. Shalyn is an exceptional user experience designer and educator, currently working for Rockstar Games, publishers of Grand Theft Auto. It's a fascinating conversation, I think, where we cover lots of bases, including this idea of inclusive design, that technology should be enjoyable and accessible to people regardless of their level of tech savviness. And of course, we talk about that, and we talk about user experience design and information architecture, and even what the Quantic EMBA means to us and how we got into it. Watch the interview. I'll be back afterwards and give you some follow-up. See you then.
I am a UX designer. Do you know what a UX designer is?
I should know. And UX, now, I know we shouldn't, but people lump together UX and UI, and they're totally different things, really.
Not totally, but they are separate things, yes.
So UI being user interface, UX being user experience.
Yes, and sometimes they're together and sometimes they're not. That's depends on the level of design organization you have in your company, right? If you can only have one, a lot of people just get a UI designer because they need an interface. But it's not all the same.
Because in the software, for instance,
Uh-huh.
user experience and user interface, I can see being slightly close together because the whole user experience is through the interface, or most of the user experience is through the interface. But user experience in the wider scheme is much wider than that, right? Because, it can be even from unboxing a piece of equipment is part of the user experience.
That could be it, absolutely. I would say that that's not typically what it's referred to when you're calling someone a UX designer, even though it says user experience. While you are absolutely correct that, understanding like the full experience of some of your user is really important, including the unboxing. I believe a product designer is more the person who's going to be thinking about that, and that's just because of the nature of the horrible naming of our job, right? We used to be called information architects, which makes a lot more sense if I'm honest with you.
Okay.
But I think to kind of market the job a little bit better for others, it started being called user experience, so that businesses would be like, oh, we can control the experience of whatever digital thing that's going on with them. But in that, a lot of graphic designers realize that, hey, there's this UX job and it's getting it, they're being paid more money than a UI designer would, an interface designer. And so sometimes they would study, sometimes not, but they would change their title over to UX. And then it becomes conflated as one thing when, it depends on the job. It depends on where you're working. It depends on a lot of stuff. But for me, specifically, I do both. But I don't consider myself a digital artist.
Okay.
I wouldn't consider myself a digital artist by any means, but I do create interfaces.
Because, maybe when I say I can't understand from your LinkedIn profile what you do, I think partly because I don't really understand, because UX is kind of a nebulous term.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure where you are in that space.
Gotcha. I'm in a more technical position. So, for instance, if you go on to, any website basically that's meant for customers, and you're going to see it probably be branded out. There's probably going to be like fun little features on it, something to get you to buy more. There's a lot of stuff that deals with kind of consumption on those types of websites. What I do is more back-end, what you would call back-end type stuff. So what we're using right now, StreamYard,
Mm-hmm.
this is a product. This is a digital product and it has an interface. This would be more like something I'd work on.
I see.
Than a commerce website. And currently, right now, I'm working on like an intranet platform. So it has to be a lot more technical. There's a lot more data. Think Salesforce and Deloitte and all of that stuff. That's what you have to think about. So I'm dealing with employees as my users rather than customers as my users.
Now, okay, I'm sorry. I'm just because I'm very curious about what you're doing. We're going to just be all over the place. From my side, so I have this website, Zonmaster, that deals with, we're kind of like a customer relationship management tool for Amazon sellers.
Okay. Yep. CRM.
So the big issue is, how do you have anything except great big tables?
Well, it depends what you're looking for, right? It depends on the information that's needed. That's why you need an information architect.
Yeah.
You need to understand what information is needed at what levels. If you look at the information regarding a product or whatever it is you're selling, you're like, every piece of information is important at some point. But what point is it important?
Yeah.
Do I need to know the barcode for the product alongside the name of the product? Or how am I searching for it? How am I looking for it? I need the name of it and the quantity, maybe the barcode later. So it's understanding the process of the people who are going through the system. And that means you don't need to have all information out at once. It's actually not a great idea to do that because it gets overwhelming.
Right.
But you don't want to have too little because then it becomes this minimalist nightmare of trying to find any kind of information to copy and paste to something else. So you have to find a good balance. And a lot of times what that means is, somewhat becoming a part of change management too. You have to help with change management because a lot of times processes need to change because the process that you have currently kind of is infused with what they're using on the interface, as it always will be. And if the interface isn't great, neither is the process. It's the same.
Yeah, and I think that's my ignorance of, user experience to a certain and maybe to a lesser extent, user interface design. But you're absolutely right. Like if I say, okay, we're going to have a big table of all this information, that means we have to have all that information at that time. All the back end processes have to pull in that information, which means everything, and it's this whole cascading shit show, for want of a better term.
No, it's true.
And
it's true. And you have to worry about the loading time.
Yeah.
You have to worry about like the color usage. If you need iconography, you need to worry about all of those things. Yeah.
And especially like with Amazon, who are pretty much horrible to deal with. And so you have to pull information from 20 different APIs and get it down and merge it in. And, and so doing all of that work, the bulk of our servers are spent doing that kind of integration work. And maybe there's a whole bunch of that we don't need to do because we don't really need to present the data. And it's such a very complicated. And I think when I started this business 8 years ago, I just said, you're just going to put a table up and it's going to be fine. Because logically, in my brain, that was all it was. But when I realized, oh no, if I have to show this, that means I have to do this. And it is a huge, complicated thing.
That is.
And I think that there's a lot of, I will grandiosely call myself tech entrepreneurs. There's a lot of tech entrepreneurs who underestimate that value.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just tech entrepreneurs. It is big companies, which is why the kind of position that I'm in is getting picked up more. And I think that's also why a lot of times the interview process for UX designers is so harsh because a lot of UI folks, and I'm not dissing them at all, but they come into the UX space and, they bowl everyone over with beautiful designs. But what really they need is the why. Why was it built this way? Why would you design it in this way? What were the measurables that you needed? Like the key the key performance indicators that you came up with, and how did you reach them? Did you reach them? Did you change anything? For me, my success is the training time. Did that go down? What about our retention rate? Did we stop losing people because they either were fired because they were making too many mistakes, or two, the system was so complicated and frustrating that they couldn't stay there anymore? Are we able to hire more diversity? Do they need to absolutely have English as their first language? Do they need a college degree to use this thing just because?
Right.
Because it's hard technology. It has nothing to do with the job itself. They can be an expert in their job, but the technology that we've built has made it so that we can only hire people who've gone to college, and we think that's because they're better at tech, which is absolutely not true.
Right. Yeah.
That is absolutely
because
not true.
10-year-olds are better at tech.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Some of them are. And those, I can't wait to start researching some of the kiddos out there, because I was not like that growing up. I did get a computer early because my father used to build PCs back in the day. He used to build them back in the 80s and 90s. He would, so I've always had access to a computer of sorts. And so I was lucky in that way, that exposed me to more technology than some folks.
A couple of months ago, I went with my mother to her eye doctor. My mother's old. And so she went to the eye doctor, and so she was having the thing, and I was watching what the nurse was doing, or whatever they call them at that point. And she had this huge monitor, like 27-inch monitor for the stuff. And I said, wow, that looks really complicated. And she goes, oh yeah, we have 13 windows open. And I said, how do you even deal with that? And she goes, oh, it's a nightmare. She goes, she said, normally 4 to 5 months for somebody to come into this job and figure out how to use this piece of software. And that's just the software.
Well, it makes me so upset.
That the nurse is using to fill in the patient information.
Like I said, there's so many companies out there realizing how much of their, how much money they're wasting by having really bad platform and intranets. Like, if I can't find answers to questions, I then have to email HR, have to find someone to email, and I'm spending my time doing that instead of doing my work. Retention is always a big thing. Issues and mistakes are also a big thing. And again, the discrimination for me is the biggest thing. This is the big reason why I'm very passionate about this, because I don't think that you should need a college education for certain jobs. And I also think that you shouldn't need, technology should be there to help, not hinder. Okay. Right. It should never be the case. People from, less affluent areas might not have as much of access to technology, and therefore won't know it. It's automatically discriminating against them. There's automatic discrimination against older folks too. There's a lot of ageism in the tech industry because of that. And it's well, just fix it. Yeah. Just fix it. But the thing is, to fix those things, everyone expects there to be this big gap. Well, they design it, and then there's a fight between designers and developers. And the thing is, you all have to just talk on the same level. You have to talk, you have to communicate the same. The number one soft skill for any UX designer, and all my previous students will know what I'm about to say, is communication. Yeah. Because that's what you're trying to do. And sometimes you need to know a little bit of that tech, or at least how it functions and how it's going to hinder or help what you're trying to build in order to do the right thing, right? So in the instance of that 13 tabs open, you don't know what's going on, you don't know what to bring, what you would have to do to understand is to follow that nurse around, watch them interact with it, see what they're opening and closing, ask them questions about what they need, what they don't need. And you can build specific experiences for a nurse versus a doctor using the same thing. What do they need access to? What do they need to see? Yeah. Having all of that information is great, but it doesn't do anybody good if it's too much. It's too much in your face. They have there's a lot of psychology to back up the fact that too much choice and too many things in front of your face just overwhelms, right? I have worked really hard to build a an image of extroversion, like a version of myself that is extroverted in order to get my job done. And I couldn't teach if I was an introvert, right? So it's something that I really like doing. And I know that, I say things in a way that's very relatable to a lot of people. So I don't mind talking on things. It doesn't even feel that bad because it just feels like you and I are talking anyway. So it doesn't feel like a big deal.
Like for me, I think it's the same, because everybody's kind of the same, but I am an introvert. A huge part of me wants to just be at home alone. But at the same point, so I spent a long time as a professional musician, so I'm up there on stage. I don't have a problem being on stage because it's not a one-on-one relationship, it's just one to many. It's no big deal. So I don't get nervous or anything being on stage. I have no problem with that. What I don't like is after playing, having to go out and talk to people. That I find more stressful than the performing. And
you're more confident in your musical playing than you are in your socializing.
Yeah. And also because of it, my career suffered, and this is something I'm only really coming to terms with now, and that I purposely kind of locked myself in a room and wrote software and created companies and did that stuff, kind of by myself or remotely for the last 20 years. And whereas what I really enjoy, or something I enjoy, is this, interaction with people. And I purposely kind of locked myself away and didn't do it. And I realize now how my career and my businesses suffered because of that. And I think that one of the things that I'm really learning to kind of slowly bring the ship around to this Quantic MBA, one of the things I'm learning in that is that the value is in the interaction. Somebody has this stupid post on LinkedIn, you can learn 90% of what you learn in an MBA online. And I made a comment on his post and I said, you're totally wrong. You can learn 100% of what you learn in an MBA online on YouTube for free. Of course you can, because a lot of it is just numbers and stats and this and that. That's not the value of an MBA. The value of an MBA is I get to meet people like you that I wouldn't normally get to meet. This concept of networking, I hate that term, but the concept of networking is really what's the value, in my opinion, of an MBA.
Yeah.
Is this forced putting people in a room together, a virtual room together, that I would never otherwise interact with. How on earth would I ever otherwise meet you if not through this,
Right.
And I think that that's really something that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I would have said, that's exactly why I'm not going to do an MBA.
Right.
Because I want to be put in a room with those other people. Whereas now I say, that's exactly why I am going to be doing an MBA. Right. I'm a bit of a late bloomer, I guess. I finally figured it out late on in life. And so the big question to get into the MBA thing, the first question off the bat is, at this point in your career, in your life, etc., why do an MBA?
Well, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time, but I didn't think that it was going to be accessible to me. I grew up very poor. So even being where I'm at right now, I grew up in Toronto. I am now living in Jersey City, working in New York City for a big company. This is like a huge thing. But I never thought about MBAs because one, it was inaccessible. And two, I didn't think it was for me. I was like, ew, businesses, ew, it's just like the same, wearing a suit and tie. That, growing up, I'm 40. When I was growing up, the businesses were very similar to one another in that way, and they still are to some degree in some industries, especially. I didn't see a lot of business women, so I didn't really see it as something accessible to me, like emotionally either. But I saw, small businesses, and I didn't know if you need one for small businesses, or I didn't know if you need any of that stuff. So over time, and I also just didn't have the confidence either. I didn't have the confidence that I could pull something like that off, that I could pull off running a company, that I would be social enough to do what I would want to do in a business. I have a huge issue with authority. And the one thing, I've always wanted my own business because I want to be my own boss, because I typically work better when I'm setting my own stuff up, when I am deciding what I'm going to be doing next. And I can get a little bit of help here and there to steer me a little bit in the right direction if I'm off course. But for the most part, you can leave me alone. I just never thought that it was going to be something for me. But as I've gone through my career, I've learned that people who have gotten them have gotten MBAs. It's done them really well. But also, there's a lot of people in positions of power who absolutely should not be in power. They should not be running companies. They have no idea what they're doing. And I don't know why I thought they knew better than me for so long. And it kind of makes me mad because they're not doing it right. And there's so many times when I know when my company or another company is making a really bad business move because I'm paying attention. I'm not listening to stock market stuff all the time, right? But if you just look at patterns, right? I took a masterclass on leadership, and I believe the CEO of PepsiCo did one. It was really good, and she talked about megatrends. Do you know what megatrends are?
Yes, yeah,
yeah. So she talked about megatrends, and she said, if you don't believe that, so megatrends are these huge trends that go for a long time. They usually, take up to 10 years or something. So one mega trend right now, if we want to look at it that way, is the spirituality, right? How many people are talking about their signs?
Right.
That used to be made fun of a couple of years ago, what about tarot cards? What about crystals? What about all of that stuff, right? That has become. I watched a talk on megatrends from 10 years ago. And this was suggested to me in that thing. She said, if you don't believe in it, watch one from 10 years ago and see how many came true. And one thing that person had said was spirituality is going to become really big. And I was like, what? It's absolutely mind-blowing, but it makes so much sense. If you pay attention to the way humans work and how history works, you can learn what will work and what won't. And to me, it's logical. But if I don't have that business, degree, and I don't have to back it up, and I don't really know how to use that knowledge to help me, then it's kind of just sitting in my head doing nothing.
Yeah.
So, with more confidence over time and, with my wanting and being more confident that I can have a company of my own, or be in a position where I'm making the bigger decisions in my company, I need to have that background to show me, because my title says designer. And if it says designer at any point, there's a lot of assumption about what I know and what I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a constant battle with folks. Even if I say I'm product designer, a product designer is someone who has to know business. But if you hear of a product designer, you're going to be like, designer, I know how to design. I can design products. And everyone thinks that they know design. And, everyone can design, but not everyone can design well.
It's like everyone says, how hard can it be to write a book? I write every day. I'm using a pen every day.
Yeah, you can absolutely write a book.
Yeah.
Will it be good?
Yeah.
Questionable.
And I think it's, kind of what you're saying. I'm very similar. I'm also from Canada.
Nice.
So, lived in Toronto. I think that I looked at an MBA, kind of like you said a while ago. I thought, why do I need an MBA? I don't want to go work in a bank or for an oil company, or things like that. Nothing wrong. Well, actually, there is something wrong with working for an oil company, but whatever. I didn't need that. But I got to this point, and I've been, starting businesses and running businesses for 20 years and doing all these other things. But I still felt that I didn't have any credibility or authority. And so there was two. I know that that's 50% external, 50% internal.
Yeah, that sounds like
I just said I didn't feel like I had it.
Yeah.
When I realized actually, I have a ton of experience, practical experience and success and all that, but inside I didn't feel like I had a stamp of authority. And so I couldn't go out and say, look, I have the authority because, I've got that. So this, it's similar to what you're saying, same kind of thing.
Right.
I believe that it's a certain amount of credibility comes along with those three letters,
I agree. And I think the thing is too, like, I do believe that the majority of people out there, you think that they know more than they do. Like, you are able to absorb information. One big thing, so, if you looked at my LinkedIn, I taught UX design for a couple of years. And one big hurdle I had with my students, which was the biggest one, was how do you change your thought process when it comes to this stuff? How do you get that confidence? How do you understand how to use what you have? How can you do it? I'm a late learner because I was teaching adults, right? And the one thing that you have to kind of instill in people is unending learning, right? Being okay to learn, being okay to fail. Failing is a good thing because you've learned a way not to do it. It's okay. Fail forward.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I request from people is to fail forward. Do not fail backward. Do not bully yourself about it because you're judging yourself harder than anyone around you. And you don't want to do that, right? I am a recovering perfectionist. I self-proclaim recovering perfectionist. And I know that I'm not going to be amazing and great at everything that I do. What matters to me is that I try and that I learn and that I move forward and I'm not super hard on myself. And I think that is something that teaching people to get out of that mindset, that perfectionist mindset that is encouraged and built by the school system, the education system is memorize everything.
Yeah.
If you don't get a good grade. If you don't get a good grade, you fail everything. You fail life. You suck. You get, this is all who you are is this great. And that's just not true. Mm-hmm. It's just not true. It's all about learning. Even if people who are watching this, even if you don't pass this MBA and you don't get your certification, who cares? At the end of the day, what matters is that you're learning, you're taking away things that you need from this, and then you are learning how to put that into your life as you need it, right? Because this, at the end of the day, is not for your teachers. It's not for your job. It's for you, right? Learning is for you. And I want more people to understand that. I want more people to believe that. I want more people to feel that. Mm-hmm. Learning is for you. Even if I wasn't looking to have my own business, I would still take this class because I love learning. I find this stuff fascinating. I want to know more. I want to know the ins and outs of these businesses. I want to be able to tear them apart from the inside.
Yeah.
So I can say, this is how you're not working. And I want to be able to speak with enough confidence about what I'm saying. Again, the people around you don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. You cannot compare yourself to other people here. You just have to compare yourself to your past self. And I hope that you also take that, because when you were saying, I don't feel like I, know enough and all of that stuff, I completely feel you. And I'm really sorry that you felt that way, because that sucks. You could just think in a more positive way and say, there's a few things I could learn.
Yeah.
Let me get into it, but instead we take ourselves to this really negative mindset of like, I'm so dumb. I don't know enough, all of that stuff.
You've been listening to my thoughts.
I'm sorry to say, you're not unique in it.
Yeah.
You're not alone in it. There's so many people who go through that feeling multiple times a day sometimes, but you're being harder on yourself than you need to be. And life is too short for that. Honestly, again, we're in a spinning rock in a void.
Yes.
Like, just do what you want to make you happy.
Now, I mean, that going about the MBA, going back to that, I think that it's not just it's not just, I think maybe we're trivializing it a little bit, to say it's a stamp of authority or whatever. But for me, I think there was a lot that I knew already, like accounting, for instance, I knew, but there was a lot of terminology I had wrong or whatever,
Right.
And, this microeconomics thing, which is pretty friggin' awesome, and the macroeconomics,
Yeah.
which is something I'd heard about,
Right.
and I realized as we did it, I knew it, but again,
Yes.
I didn't know the terminology, and opening it up in a formal way. People diss education, and sometimes they say, "Oh, you're becoming cookie cutter," but we have to learn. That's the way we communicate to each other, is by
It's
having a shared terminology, right? So
yes, it's
that's something
communication.
I'm digging about the thing so far, is
Yeah.
it's falling into place, really.
Yeah. I also want to touch on something else that you said earlier, which was, I joined this because I want to, talk with other people. And I think that's something that's really ignored is how important it is to teach one another. Like how important it is for our own learning to teach one another. That is the biggest thing. When I was teaching, I would always have my students, they had to talk to each other first. To answer any questions, they talked and asked each other first. They didn't come to me. Because what good is it to come to me? I can give you the answer, but you haven't thought about it. But maybe someone else understood that it was a little bit hard of a difficult concept, and they can explain it in a way, in their words, that works better with you, that can help you. And in their explaining, now they're practicing talking about it, and they're feeling more confident in that. Because a big part of an MBA business is networking, is communication, is having that confidence in what you're saying. So I think what you're saying right now also is very valid. You are building the language to be able to feel that confidence in what you are intending to do.
Yeah. And like, if you see the video I had about the accounting project, and pretty much any other video on my channel, is that I'm making these videos so that I can explain it out loud, because that's how I realize I understand it. And when we did the accounting project, I loved the women that I was in my accounting project with, and we would talk for hours, and we sat there and we explained the accounting project to each other, and that's how we realized, we kind of learned it by explaining it to each other.
Yes.
I fell into like the greatest group, and that really, I think, made a huge difference. Because I whipped through the accounting thing. Like I did all the modules like in a couple of weeks or something like that, because it was something that I do anyway, like the accounting. But so I could go through the modules quickly, but at the end of it, I realized maybe I didn't really understand it. So when we sat down and explained it to each other, and had to kind of work through a problem out loud.
Yeah.
I think that's really what made the big difference. And I guess there's a reason to have individual projects and group projects, but the group project, I can already see there's a lot more value, in my opinion, because of that.
Yeah.
Like we're going to do the microeconomics, when we do it, we're going to have to do a video. So maybe we get kind of that benefit out of it like that.
Maybe. It's possible. I don't know. I also chose to be in a group for the accounting project because I also recognize that it is much better to be able to bounce ideas off of people, and to not just use three brains is better than one brain. That will always be the case. So, and I, opposite you, do not know accounting at all. At all. This is not my forte. I used to love math growing up. I am now like numbers dyslexic. That was so hard for me. I was like, why are we starting off with the hardest thing I've ever done in my life? I was like, am I too old for this? I'm not grasping. And it took a lot. It took a lot because, my team was a little bit more, we kind of laid back. our approach was we're going to do it on our own and then come back, which I understand also, because you do it on your own, you're forced to really think about it. You can't rely on one another. So it was actually a good way of starting and doing it that way, because now I actually really understand what I did versus relying on other people to do that part for me. But because of that, I didn't have a lot of that back and forth of what was going on. And I also didn't quite, the videos didn't click with me. Like not that the webinars, the videos within the course were good, but the webinars themselves didn't click with me. So I had a very difficult time with them. I have ADHD. My brain would just go somewhere else, and I can't, sitting there for 3 hours was never going to happen. And so I really had to force myself in that one. And I then came up with like awesome ways of studying, and I did really well. And I was really proud of myself because I had to just deal with it. And the whole way I'm thinking, this is what my students had to go through. This is what my students had to go through. The whole time I'm like, I can't give up and I can't complain, because my students had to do the same thing and they were given the same amount. So that was a learning thing for me. And absolutely being in the group projects, it's like icebreakers, right? No one except massive extroverts like an icebreaker. Nobody again except them. But we all know the value. When have you done an icebreaker that you didn't then have value out of to get value? When that has never happened. It has never happened, because an icebreaker will always break the ice. It will always help you learn something. It will always help you feel more connected. It's just like ripping off the Band-Aid, though. It's one of those things that you just until you start, and then you're like, okay. And I think that's what this whole process is, as we're going, we work with the group. So we're on video calls with each other. Now we get to be on a video. Now people who are very nervous about being on videos, they're going to have to get more used to it. Yeah. Right. And like, this must have been a lot worse for folks prior to the pandemic. I've always been an online nerd. I played video games online for a long time. I'm used to like online communication, but a lot of folks, I'm sure they are quite nervous about it. I'd be interested to see if you could get anyone chatting with you as practice for being on video. That's a good idea. And having conversations, right? I think that could be really good to help boost confidence and, help others feel like, okay, well, this person wasn't comfortable with it, and now the end, they're fine. And, it's just all about just doing it, just jumping in and doing it. Just, again, fail forward. Yeah. It's not a bad thing.
And I mean, what's kind of interesting for me is that this is an online MBA, and yet hardly anybody, and that's not true, there's a small percentage of people who are active on Slack even. Yeah. Yes. Like supposedly there's 200 or 250 people in our cohort. Yeah. I think. But if you look on Slack, there's like 40 of us who chat, Yeah.
Yes.
And some don't even chat in an intelligible way, so... No names.
I think it just takes a little while for some people. Yeah. The thing that I used to do in my classes was I would force group lunches for the first 2 weeks. So in person, I would make sure everyone went out to, or sat together for lunch for 2 weeks. They had to. And at first they're like, and then the thing that everyone thanked me for at the end of the year was, thank you so much for making us sit together. Thank you so much. Forced, engagement with one another. You can do that online too, like a forced lunch. You have to stay on Zoom and you're going to have conversations. That anyone who did it was absolutely, they understood. Yeah. And I think a lot of folks just don't realize what they're missing because they haven't been in an online learning environment that embraces and understands the psychology behind some of these decisions that get made for networking and for communication, right? They think, oh, it's just an optional thing and I can just like whatever. But yeah, it is optional. But you get out of any course and any learning what you put into it.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn about networking and communication, you have to practice. You have to do the thing, or else it's not going to just show up in your skill set for taking the class. It's just not going to be like, oh, like we're not Neo in the Matrix and no Kung Fu just by like, we actually have to practice it.
Yeah.
Part of the practice is just getting used to having these conversations. I think with some time, with some confidence, folks might start talking a little bit more. It's just going to take a while. And also it is near the holidays.
Yeah.
I did have an idea to have people like do an icebreaker together that I had mentioned, but there was like 5 people who said something. So I think I'll bring it up again maybe later or halfway through when people start realizing how much they're going to rely on their network to get jobs.
Yeah, like, I mean,
recommendations.
what I wonder is you're taking the MBA presumably to get some benefit, professional benefit out of it.
Mhm.
How do you think that professional benefit's going to come if you don't talk to anybody?
It's a hard lesson, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a lesson I learned. I learned this lesson in university because when I went to university, I barely socialized, and it really affected me. Like it really did. If I had socialized more, I would have had an easier time after school getting a job and all of that stuff that I just never did, and I have regrets for not doing that.
Yeah.
And, I myself took a UX course like a decade ago, and I was forced to, talk to people. I was forced to work with other people. And it was actually the best thing that ever happened to me because I was able to improve in myself and my career at the same time through these exercises. And it's not about memorizing, it's about talking. That's it.
So to that end, then why the Quantic MBA, which is an online MBA? Like, did you look at other options?
I did.
And how did you end up on Quantic?
I mean, let's be real. The price point is...
Okay, yes, the price.
Is the thing. The price point is the thing. I had looked at the Stanford one and had gone to like a meetup for it. But it was so expensive and it came across a little bit like, I don't know how to put it. It was all about the name, and I understand it. It seemed interesting. I was interested in it, but I want something that is not so much about the name of it. I want it just about what I'm learning. And after I took the courses on the online app, the stuff they had to do, and you applied, because I was like, I'll decide after I apply, if I want to do it. And I did the modules. I did all of them, and I was so happy. I was so impressed. I'm like, this is exactly how I teach. There's humor, there's silliness, there's seriousness, there's backlinks, there's lots of stuff going on. There's resources in the side. This is amazing. This is exactly what I needed. It just worked out. It worked out not just with the price, but even without that price, which is great.
Yeah.
Even without that, it just works. And especially I can work while I do it.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for me is I need to pay rent still.
Yeah.
I still need to pay rent. I cannot just, go back to school. I wish, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. I have to be more reasonable with myself. So it's been really, I'm really happy with my decision to join Quantic so far. So far, so good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I was on the fence. I mean, I'm always on the fence. I'll be on the fence until I get the piece of paper. But I love the tech and I enjoy the content and everything. I'm exactly the same thing. And, I live in the middle of nowhere. So going to a school was not an option.
At first, I was like, we'll see what it's like. And then I started getting more excited. And then I was like, I better get accepted. I'm going to be so mad. I was reading all these things about the acceptance rate being low. And I was like, no, I have to get in because I also love the message. I love the idea of disrupting education because I think education truly does need an overhaul.
Yeah.
Not it for for young kids to adults to older adults, everyone like could benefit from, a change in the way that we approach education as a nice to have, even late after high school. And even then, how we're teaching in high school, let's disrupt it. I agree with what they're saying, what they're doing. And I agree with, I really like that they are focusing on bringing people from more diverse backgrounds into business, because I feel the same way and do the same thing for tech. I volunteer and teach UX design to, people, to these colleges. So Kingsborough College, they get offered free UX classes, and I taught for that as well. I did some free classes for other folks who come from backgrounds where they cannot afford secondary education, because whether you can afford secondary education or not shouldn't omit you from the tech industry, because everything is now run by tech. When you're being omitted from the tech industry, you're being omitted from expanding and from life in the future. Basically, we don't exist without technology anymore. It's no longer a nice to have. It is a right.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. 5 years ago, I went, this is crazy whenever I say it like this, but I went to New Zealand and I went to a Maori village and I lived in their library and taught them for 6 weeks about how they could use technology to build businesses and make money without ever having to leave their village.
That's awesome.
And use the technology also to promote their culture out there.
Oh my God, I love that. So how was it?
It was awesome. It was life-changing, really, for me.
Oh, I
hope it was life-changing for them, though I'm not really sure. But it was definitely life-changing for me. So we worked on one person. And, what I ended up doing is I was taken there by the person who ran the school, and it was a Maori language school, and which is kind of like a one-room classroom, all the kids, all the ages, all together. And I taught them all one afternoon a week. We had a kind of formal class, but what we came up with is this idea of writing a book. And so we wrote a book while I was there that was kind of like A is for apple, but in Maori language. And so we made the book and put it on Amazon in the time that I was there. And I was like, this is what technology can do for you.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so by the time I left, we had a book in our hands.
Oh, that's so nice.
And I think it blew their little minds,
Oh, I love that. Yes, I did something similar. I taught some, I think it was with Chick Tech, and they had some, kids who were like, high school ages, so that's kind of varying. And I taught them how to design an app in like a weekend, and they were so excited, and they also picked it up ridiculously fast, which I was like, oh my God, this is what I was like, I'm gonna be obsolete, which is totally okay with me. That's one thing about continuous learning. Everyone needs to, because at some point, especially if you're in tech, you are going to become obsolete. Don't become one of those people who gatekeeps. Just let evolution happen and move on. Go do something else.
Is there anything you want to promote or blurb about?
I would like to promote the book Mindset by Carolyn Dweck, as I always do, because it changed my life. That is where my recovering perfectionist has, started recovery from that book. It really is about having a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset, and just taking life not so seriously.
That's awesome. You work for a games company.
Yes.
Now, I'm not a games person. In my life, I've played 3 video games.
That's unfortunate.
The thing I don't like about video games is that I feel like I'm spending my time learning how to control the video game. I'm learning how to use the controller. I'm not playing the game. And that really infuriates me.
you're doing it wrong.
Uh-oh.
Because that is why PC gaming is superior. And I'm going to get people fighting me on this one, but I don't mind people knowing I'm working in a game company. I don't have an issue with that. I love video games. I was just playing one, honestly, right now. You're not playing the right. You saying you don't like video games is like you saying I don't like movies, I don't like TV shows, and I don't like books.
Okay.
That's what that's saying to me, which is insane because there's so many different kinds of games out there that will suit your mood and suit what you want to do. The first thing you want to do, if you're better in the PC and the controller's not working, it's not worth it to learn the controller, then don't. Just use your mouse and your keyboard, right? Just use what you have in front of you that you're used to use.
It wasn't.
There's also
I remember
LA
playing
Noire.
Crash Bandicoot and going, this fucking controller is like nothing. Come on, just go over there. I know what I want you to do. How do I do it? You know?
I'm equally bad. I have a Switch and all I play on it is Picross. And I'm not even joking. I play a puzzle game on it. That's it. I'm just, it hurts my thumbs. I'm maybe getting older, but actually, I think it was PlayStation just came out with a controller a fully accessible controller meant for people who have like maybe just one hand or missing fingers or can't move very much, can't even use their hands. And I just feel like that is so cool. That is so awesome. I don't know if you've ever seen people use like their feet to play things. Yeah. It's just absolutely fascinating.
People find a way,
You find a way, but I feel like something like that could be good for folks who are just not cool with the controller. Because even though I love video games, I do not like playing with a controller. I do not play with a controller. I play with my mouse and my keyboard, and my mouse has 12 buttons on it. Well, actually like 15 buttons on it.
Good Lord.
That's how I play.
Okay.
All my F buttons are on it.
Wow. Okay.
So recommend other games.
Thank you so much for spending the time. I mean,
absolutely.
Honestly, I feel like I could talk for another hour, but I've got to go.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, talk anytime. I'm happy to chat, and thanks for doing this. I think it's wonderful that you're doing this because it really helps other people not feel alone in feeling a little lost in what they're doing and a little bit like they're learning as they go. And, from what I've watched, because I watched a couple, I was like, this is great because you're being vulnerable with people. You are really letting them know like, hey, this is new for me too. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend I know everything. So let's go on this journey together. And I think that's wonderful of you to share. So thank you for doing that.
My pleasure. All right. Thanks for watching that interview. Wasn't that interesting? I've really found it interesting. It's something I've actually watched the whole thing a few times because there's so many nuggets in there. If you like this kind of thing, like, subscribe, and of course, hit the bell notification if you want to hear as soon as I drop another episode. I'm doing interviews with people, cohort members, not cohort members, people who graduated already, people who are ahead of me in the program, and maybe I'll be doing some interviews with people who don't even have anything to do with the Quantic MBA. It's a growing channel. See you soon. Bye for now.